Welcome everyone to the second presidential debate. My name is Jason Campbell Foster, Director of Campus Activities, and I will be moderating this evening. I'll try to make it as fun yet informative as possible. So before we kick things off, I'd like to offer candidate Corrado the opportunity to make a 1-minute opening remark.
Sure. So my name is Mary Corrado. I'm a third-year political science and environmental studies major. I joined the student government my first week on campus, and since then I've worked on everything from TRACE and college expectations. I'm currently in my second year as the Assistant Vice President for Student Services, which means I work on housing and dining and committees with administrators. I sit on the finance board, and I recognize a lot of people from the last debate, so you probably all think I'm obsessed with recycling. But while sustainability has become my niche within SGA, my experiences over the past 3 years have allowed me to broaden my vision for the coming year past wind turbines and color-coded bins. The pillars that my running mate Zach Shaw and I have come up with, we believe that representation in knowing who your senator is and what they can do for you is just as important as us communicating with you. And over the last few years, I've watched our outreach plummet and our effectiveness plummet with it. And I think that keeping us accountable.
Thank you. Senator Naragi, same with you.
So to start off, I want to tell Scott and Matt and everyone else who's here who doesn't know exactly what's going on or didn't originally come to the debate why you should stick around. My name is Nick Naragi, and I'm running for president of the student body, and I want to help you to get your voices heard. Right now, what we do more often than not is we're trying to get your voices into Senate, but before we can represent you, we need to learn how to talk to you. Right now, we don't do that very well. So for all of you who are here, who didn't intend on coming to the debate, stick around so that way we can hear from you about your main concerns. To tell you a little bit about me and my running mate, like I said, I'm Nick Naragi, I'm running with Maya Kihata, and we want to lead your SGA because we have the experience, but also the solutions to make a serious change for the school. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Question number 1. Candidates, please take a minute to tell the audience why you chose to attend Northeastern. Mr. Naraki, you go first.
I chose to attend Northeastern because when I heard the co-op program was getting 90% of graduates a job 6 months out of college, and I heard about how terrible the job market was coming into college in the first place, I knew this was a place that I wanted to come. I feel like a lot of students share the same opinion. A lot of students are here because we have the #1 co-op program in the entire world, and I really, really emphasize that in all the work that we do.
Ms. Corrado, same question.
So I came to Northeastern because I didn't want to go to a school in a city or a big school or very far away from home, which is completely the opposite of what I found at Northeastern. It was the only school on my list that was in a city and that had more than 4,000 undergrads. And when I got here, I was like, this was a huge mistake. What am I doing? Nick and I lived in the same dorm freshman year, and he could probably tell you I was like shell-shocked. But over the past 3 years, I realized that the students here are, I hope, more likely me than I thought. I hope I'm doing a good job representing everyone, but I really believe that through my position in the SGA, I want to improve how I represent you. Because I go around thinking I'm making the right choice, because over the past 3 years I've realized how much alike we all are, the infinite ideas that we all have, but I know that that definitely needs to be improved, and before I leave here I'm determined to do that.
Thank you. Next question, a question near and dear to my heart. What are your thoughts on improving the process of event planning for clubs in the upcoming year? Ms. Corrado, you're first.
So I have been struck, like I said, by the amount of students here with going in 16,000 different directions. And I think that one of the most wonderful things about the university is how many clubs we have. But I understand that the issues from sitting in the office and working with administrators, how to make all those ducks in a row. And I think what's really important is to have a very strong relationship with the other people on the cabinet, because those are the people with the expertise. There's the Vice President for Student Involvement, who I think has a wonderful relationship this year, and it continues to be so since the cabinet was restructured in this way. And it's very important that I am a liaison to all the students, but that the cabinet works effectively, and I can effectively lead the cabinet in order to make those relationships flourish.
Great, thank you. Mr. Naragi, same question.
To talk about the programming and contract process at Northeastern, we need to first analyze what the problems with these processes are. Many student groups like to put on events on campus, like to bring speakers, comedians, musicians, and the number one thing that they run into while they're trying to go through the programming process is the restrictions on contracts. What we need to do is help students to understand this process better and work with the administration to expedite it in a way that is easy for students to understand.
Thank you. Ms. Corrado, you have an opportunity for a 40-second rebuttal if you'd like.
I think it's really important that all the processes are simpler than they are right now. I agree with my opponent. I sit on the finance board right now and I see how complicated it is to put an event on. And I think that the SGA can be a great tool in helping students in that way if they know that that resource is available to them.
Additional 40 seconds if you'd like.
I've had a variety of different experiences when it comes to programming. I've sat on the finance board. I've been in a fraternity that programs on a yearly basis. And I've also worked with President Petrin this entire year to make sure that we're talking to administrators and improving this process. This isn't something that happened over the course of a year. President Sabo worked on this, President Petrin worked on this, and I would continue this next year as your president.
Great, thank you. Question number 3. How do you plan to improve the way student groups are able to participate in
our structuring of Senate next year is that we've both been senators. I've been both kinds of senators, both a special interest senator and an academic senator, and we both feel that the process the way it is right now allows us to really enjoy ourselves, but it's clear that we're not being as effective as we hope we would be. And Zach and I hope to restructure the academic senatorship so that it functions as much like special interest senators as it can. That the different colleges' senators work together in order to report on the goals that they've worked on all year long, all semester long, so that students have the opportunity to give them their feedback, whether they like what they're doing or not, and work with the administrators within the colleges, because right now we're both functioning in a bit of a silo, and we can never move forward if we're just spinning around in that direction.
1 minute for you, sir.
That doesn't really sound like a restructuring of Senate. It sounds like trying to improve on the current process, which is good, but I don't think it's good enough. What we have at Northeastern is, or in SGA, is a representation structure that doesn't work for our students. People don't associate with their college, they associate with their major. They associate with the student groups that they're in. So giving those groups senators and giving town hall meetings or other informal meetings where students of these groups can express their concerns is the most important thing that we can do.
Thank you. Ms. Corrado, rebuttal?
I think in being in the association for the last 3 years, I've seen a lot of town halls. I've seen that requires a lot of effort to get students to come out. That requires a lot of effort on the behalf of students. And as much as that would be great if every student had the time and the energy to come and voice their opinion about everything, I think we need to work harder so that it's easier for students to give their feedback and we can know what we're doing right and wrong.
Thank you. Mr. Naragi, an additional 40 seconds if you'd like.
If I know Northeastern students, I know that they're passionate. I know that they care. We need to give them their information in a way that they can care about it, rather than just talking about nonsensical updates and things that aren't important to them. Students, when talking about the issues that matter, will come and express their opinions. We need to make sure we're focusing on the right spots.
Great, thank you. Question number 4. What are your thoughts on the smoke-free campus referendum? Mr. Naragi, 1 minute.
So there's kind of two sides to the smoke-free referendum. I think that on one side, we need to be really doing our job in Senate to poll the student body and get their feedback before we make a decision on this or before we made a decision on this. And telling the administration that it's their job to poll the students is delegating our own responsibilities to them. What we need to focus on is getting the students' opinions and making sure that we're coming to a consensus as a student body on what we want for our school. Not only with smoking policy, but with everything.
Thank you. Ms. Corrado, your response?
I attended the second of the 2 smoking policy forums last week, and there were representative students, a student on the committee from SGA, and students and newly hired staff and staff from all different avenues of the university. And I think one specific thing that was said during it was that this is an educational institution, and we, on top of everything, that trumps everything else, is that we have an obligation to educate students. And as an SGA member, I don't take a side. We voted on a sense of the Senate that said, we encourage the cessation programs and we encourage the university to continue with what they've been doing thus far in getting the student opinion and making the decision that reflects that student opinion, and I have to agree with that.
Thank you. Rebuttal for you, sir?
As the chair of Senate, I'm unbiased on the matter, but as a student of Northeastern and a representative of each of you, I'm not. I work to represent your opinions, and saying that the student government is unbiased is saying that the student body is unbiased, and I don't think that's the case.
Ms. Corrado, additional 40 seconds if you'd like.
I think had my opponent come to the forum last week, he would have seen that the student body is definitely not unbiased, but that they have a lot to say, and that although the SGA encourages the university through that sense of the Senate, we have a lot of innovative students who are part of groups that I had never even heard of to begin with. And I think that we are missing an opportunity. As much as we'd like to say we're the SGA and we want to represent every single one of you, we're not doing that right now. And to talk impassioned about how we're going to do that without saying exactly how, I think that needs work.
Thank you. Question number 5. Do you think relations between the Northeastern student body and the surrounding residents of Boston have improved? Ms. Corrado, you go first.
I'm very encouraged by the efforts by the Breakfast Club and the community ambassadors. I think that really reflects who the student body is on Sunday morning as well as on Saturday night. I think that we can always be doing more as we continue to expand. We've looked at the institutional master plan and seen that we have plans to expand as a university. And that means that we all have students, whether we're here now or there will be students here in 5 or 10 years, we all have an obligation to remain true, whatever night of the week it is, to who we are as students. And I think the Community Ambassadors Program is a great way of doing that, and I encourage more students to get involved in that way.
Thank you. Mr. Naragi, your response?
The student body has a really symbiotic relationship with the community that surrounds it. There's plenty of people on Mission Hill or in the Fenway area that don't like Northeastern students because a small minority of us cause problems. I think over the last year and even before that, I Am Northeastern campaign, as well as the administration as a whole, has done a better job of educating students on how they can be responsible and be a good neighbor. But I still think we need to make efforts to make strides in that area.
Ms. Corrado, 40 seconds for rebuttal.
I agree with my opponent that there can always be more work done in that area. We can always improve our reputation because at the end of the day, that is our reputation. It's not a matter of the administrators of the school. It's us as students. And I think we should always reflect back on the fact that someday we'll be the 80-year-olds, maybe with the college kids living next to us, and we should act accordingly.
Additional 40 seconds for you, sir, if you'd like.
I think this is also a great time to talk about how right now, SGA doesn't do a great job of representing off-campus students, and off-campus students feel sometimes alienated from the Northeastern community because they aren't surrounded by 1,000 other people who live in their dorm, and they aren't always on campus. If you're off-campus within the Boston area, or you're a commuter, it's hard to engage you, and SGA really needs to make strides to work with off-campus student services, as well as other ways in order to interact with these students.
Thank you. Next question for the candidates. What would you tell your opponent if they asked you what it takes to be a good student body president? Mr. Naragi, 1 minute.
The most important thing for the student body president position alone is leadership. Leadership of the students in SGA, as well as leadership of all the students who are not in SGA, the students that aren't directly involved, the ones that we need to engage and get the feedback from. Personally, I have the experience and maturity to be a face guy for the organization and to represent you in meetings with administrators in order to get what you want.
Thank you. Mr. Corrado, 1 minute.
I think something that everyone thinks about when they think of the student body president is that they should be reflective and a representation of who I am. How do I relate to that person? And I think it's important that that person be a model student and in every way on campus, have good judicial standing, have good academic standing, and in terms of leadership, be less of a delegate and less of a vision caster and more of a problem solver. In those meetings with administrators, you can't just be the complainant of everyone on campus. As much as that is part of your job, you need to also have to be able to devise effective solutions to those problems. And you need someone with the leadership and experience that I have over the past 3 years to be able to sit in those meetings and get those things done.
Great, thank you. 40-second rebuttal.
I think, Mary, you're absolutely right, and that's probably a quote directly from our website, that we are making the solutions to fix these problems. It's not taking your time in meeting with an administrator to complain and finger point. It's taking the time to bring them a solution to a problem that exists and that students want fixed, and tell them what part they can play in fixing that for the students.
Thank you. Additional 40 seconds.
I completely agree with my opponent in that sector. I've sat in meetings with administrators in my capacity in SGA over the last 3 years, where I have learned how to work with them, how the administrators work, and what works best for them. And I've been able to bring that back to SGA and the board I chair, the Renewable Energy Initiatives Board, and seen what mechanisms work best within SGA that then you're able to work with administrators, because that is a huge part of your job as student body president. That's not seen as much by the students.
Great, thank you. Next question. In the past, it seems that the student body presidents have not been able to truly influence university officials for change. What are your thoughts on that statement, and what are some of the ways you plan to change this? Ms. Corrado, you're first.
I think that that's not necessarily true, but that it is true to an extent. The student body president has a lot of other student leaders working with it, many other vice presidents who are internally elected by the association, and it is important that they have a vision for the rest of the year, but also that they're able to work within their executive cabinet to get those specific things done. And something that they're passionate about every year that I've seen in every president that I've worked under is that when they find something that they're passionate about, that's where their leadership skills thrive. And I think if they are able to promote the best possible working environment for everyone who has joined the association really to thrive and to serve other students, because that happens to be what they're passionate about, is something that the student body president, that should be their main goal, aside from any other tangible thing that they've talked about during campaign.
Great, thank you. Same question to you, sir.
This speaks directly to the vision that Maya and I have for SGA. In order to be effective, in order to represent students to administrators, we have to first restructure Senate in a way that is representative of the very diverse student body we have. Next, we have to build our communication strategy so that way we're talking in these town hall meetings, via social media, whatever works best for students, so that way we can talk to them and get their feedback and tell them what we're doing. Next, we need to use this process and demonstrate to administrators that we can do the job that they expect us to do. When administrators come to us and ask us for what the student body thinks, we need to be able to tell them that. Sure of what the student body thinks, a majority of the student body, and after we have those three pieces, we can work with administrators effectively to get anything that students want on this campus done.
Great, thank you. Additional 40 seconds.
In my experience in the past 3 years, I've worked on the student services side of things primarily. I'm the chair of the Renewable Energy Initiatives Board, and our most recent project, the board has finally gotten on its feet, since it was pretty much nothing when I came to it, that we funded the bike stair repair stand over in West Village A. And I think that was a really great illustrative experience for me, because the working with administrators and seeing what works for them and what they need, and then how to come back to SGA and work within what we have and see what works within our mechanisms, because there are some things that definitely don't work right now. And what does was an extreme learning curve that I have already done, and I see that I have the leadership skills to have worked with the administrators and be able to get things done within SGA.
Thank you. Additional 1 minute rebuttal for everyone.
When I went to a budget priorities meeting, I asked a senior administrator, what do you expect from SGA? And they told me that we need to be providing the feedback and be the two-way bridge between students and the administrators. That is SGA's job. So in order to be effective, in order to represent you, a student here at Northeastern University, we have to be that bridge that the administration expects us to be. We have to bring them feedback, and we have to be effective at doing it.
Thank you. Question number 8. What are some of the reasons you chose your running mate, and why do you think they would make an excellent EVP? Mr. Naragi, you're up first.
Let me tell you a little bit about Maya. She's currently comptroller of the finance board, so if any of you have requested money from the SAF, you probably went to a meeting where she chaired it, and they asked you a bunch of questions about why you want to have the money, and go through the line items so that way you can have this funding. She's extremely hardworking. She's been consistent throughout the entire year with all the things that she's done. She's held a really clean board, and she's able to lead a team as EDP next year that is going to balance off my leadership as president. I see the president-EDP relationship as co-presidents, the president of the student body being an external president who goes and speaks to students and administrators, and the EVP being the internal president who's chairing the Senate meeting, project managing all of the cabinet members, and effectively working together to make sure that the organization runs smoothly.
Thank you. Ms. Corrado, same question.
So Zach Shaw is a second-year mechanical engineering major who's currently on co-op in Maine, which I think is a really cool concept that was just kind of a byproduct of the fact that we knew that we wanted to work together next year, even more so than what we had done this year. He sat on the Student Services Committee, and that's where we really started to work together on tangible projects that have been making a difference on campus that students see. Zach is extremely hardworking and passionate about SGA. It was also the first club that he joined on campus, and he has thrown himself into it, and he is so excited for next year, no matter what happens. But he has the leadership skills, and he's proven that this past year, that he will lead internally, personalities aside, the internal cabinet, as well as with the ideas and vision that he has for the student body, both of us together.
Thank you. Additional 40 seconds.
I have to say that I commend Zach for his running from out of the state. It's not easy, but it also shows that we are so committed to co-op here and going abroad and having a global experience that it's a good thing. However, I think that Maya and I balance each other out in a way that Zach and yourself don't really do. You have a lot of the same things versus the differences that balance Maya and I out. I'm extremely visionary. She's level-headed and able to lead an organization. And I don't see the differences in experience or differences in leadership style between you two.
Thank you. Ms. Corrado, additional 40 seconds.
I think one thing about Zach and I is that we've both taken the time and jumped at every opportunity that we've had to advocate for students. We've had the experiences to get tangible things done on campus, whereas Nick and Maya have, while they've been in leadership positions within the organization, they have not advocated on behalf of students the way that Zach and I have on tangible projects that take working through different situations more so than other leaderships internally.
Thank you. Next question. 240 Curry Student Center was developed as a home for student leaders to meet, collaborate, and to work to continue fueling the amazing groups we have here on campus. In recent years, the office has turned into a desolate and messy place that does not properly support our student leaders. It's much nicer than I would have said it. How do you think these conditions can be improved? Ms. Corrado, you're first.
I think this is a testament to the fact that, at least as long as I've been here, there's been a huge boom in student groups and student ideas and students constantly wanting to do more. And I think that in order for us to be a representation of the diversity on campus, it's important that we're taking in your needs that are your immediate needs, which include having a computer or a place to store all the things that are funded by the finance board that I see every week when I go to finance board, all of the things that go into putting on different events throughout the year. It's important that we find a mechanism that helps us take that feedback in and fix those problems for you immediately so that we can show you the resources we do have and so that you're running smoothly and SGA and our resources become a secondary level to that.
Thank you. 1 minute for you, sir.
The greatest thing about 240 is it has the ability to give student groups an area that they can't find anywhere else on campus. Lots of student organizations go and do their meetings elsewhere and do their work on computers in the library or from home. But 240 Curry is a meeting space and a storage space that you wouldn't find anywhere else. We need to emphasize the areas of 240 that are utilized for unique parts of campus life and then maybe downplay the other areas that maybe a computer or something else where you could find it elsewhere on campus that wouldn't be as important to a student group in that area.
Thank you. Ms. Corrado, 40-second rebuttal.
I think the most important thing, again, that we can do is to take in every need and every complaint and everything that's working about 240 because I think it is an illustration of what else is going on campus, what things are working and are not working on a level that just makes your club be able to run and that you're able to print off your flyers or whatever else you do using 240. That once we are making sure that all of the mechanisms are in place that's making it work, then we can get to what philosophically makes us be able to represent you in the best possible way.
Thank you. Additional 40 seconds.
Few student groups have their own office that they can work out of. 240 Curry provides that for student groups that don't. We need to make sure that we're utilizing it in a way that works best for these students and realize that it's only so big. We need to utilize it for the things that are the most important for students.
Great, thank you. Question 10. What would you do as president to uphold Northeastern's unique commitment to entrepreneurship and innovative education? Mr. Naragi, 1 minute.
Given our sponsors, I feel like this is a really great question. I think that one thing that I see IDEA doing really, really well is talking to students who are specifically interested in entrepreneurship. They're talking not only students, but alumni as well. You get people who are in the leadership of IDEA who are able to communicate very, very well with people who are interested in those initiatives, and we need to be doing the same thing in all the other areas of campus. Whether it be club sports, whether it be student government, a political organization, academic organizations, we should be making sure that we're focusing on the students that are particularly interested in that.
Thank you. Ms. Corrado, 1 minute.
I met some of the students from the E-Club my first week on campus in Blueprint, the leadership program from upstairs. And that was part of what blew me away coming here originally, is the students that were on campus who had all of these ideas and just believed that they could do whatever they put their minds to. And I think that goes across the board for all of the student groups. And they are a great model for the type of influence that we really need to be able to tap into, because they are the students on campus who have ideas and have things within their organization that are working, and SGA should be a resource for them. They should know that they can give us their feedback, and we will work on and use our resources for what they need.
Thank you. 40-second rebuttal.
I would argue that IDEA in the SGA right now, IDEA doesn't need SGA. SGA needs to provide more valuable resources, build up those communications and relationships with administrators before we can even go to IDEA or Entrepreneurs Club and say, we can be a resource for you. I think that these groups are very well organized and work like a well-oiled machine. So SGA needs to work on how it's working, and then once we're effective, go and talk to them.
Thank you. 40 seconds.
I think again that it's important to realize that these student groups are just, whether they're entrepreneurial in nature or not, are just like every other student group on campus. And SGA should be something that is not a hindrance to them at any point. They should know when we're going to be useful to them, and that how to come and who to come to with what they need. And the times that we should hear from them is the times that something is wrong. They want something fixed and they know we can do it. When things are working right, that means they're thriving and we're doing our job.
Great, thank you. Question 11. Let me try that again. Why do you think you're more qualified for this position than your opponent for the position of the student body president? Ms. Corrado, you're up first.
I think over the past 3 years, I've had real experiences in working on behalf of students throughout the committees I've been involved in, both within SGA and the things I've done outside of SGA. I also think while I have not been on an e-board position, I hold the chair of the Renewable Energy Initiatives Board. I'm also the Assistant Vice President of Student Services, and I've seen what works within the SGA from all different angles. And I believe my opponent has had the chance this year to prove himself about why he deserves this position the most. And I think that if he had thought about it from the beginning, he might have gone about his time in the SGA a little differently.
1 minute for you, sir.
I've spent a lot of time this year identifying the problems, but we've all been doing that. I'm working on the solutions. There's a difference. I think, Mary, one thing you said publicly before is that it's taken you several years on the REIB to master that and turn it into something great from something that's not so great. And in order to do that in SGA, in order to do that on the cabinet of the student government, you have to have been on the cabinet of student government. Transitioning from the role of EVP, which I'm in right now, to president is a natural transition. It's one that will allow me to utilize the initiatives that I've worked on this year, as well as the experience that I've gained from working with a cabinet that hasn't always been successful through ups and downs, and transition that into next year.
Thank you. 40-second rebuttal.
I don't think that if you look through the track record of this past year that you could point to anything specifically that you can thank Nick for. I think he's done a lot on a broader scale. But when you look at what you want from your student body president, it's not necessarily someone who has eased into the position of president or who can work when they feel like it well with the students on the cabinet. I think it's important, and I'd like to rebut what was said about REIB. REIB did not exist 2 years ago, and we have grown, and it's been an experience and a model for the type of leadership that I can bring to anything that I lead.
Additional 40 seconds.
I would challenge that most students can identify any single thing that has been done by SGA, whether it be by me, another member of cabinet, or a senator. A lot of students here, especially the ones who aren't here for the debate, the ones that are eating and still sticking around, probably don't know what SGA does, and that's a huge problem. I recognize that, but I've told you about the solution to fixing that problem. I've told you how I'm going to engage you in a solution that is going to make Northeastern better without taking up too much of your time. Outside of that, I think that my experience in SGA, as well as my experience in leadership outside of SGA, is going to have a collective effort to make me the best candidate for this position.
Thank you. Question 12. What are some of the biggest challenges facing Northeastern today? Mr. Naragi, 1 minute.
I think the biggest challenge that we face on a day-to-day basis is the lack of relationship with administrators. This is on the forefront of the problems that we have because everything that students try to do gets shut down by a lack of communication with administrators, a lack of communication with the people who are in charge. We want to make sure that we can talk to people in the administration by being effective but also being interested. Talking to students to figure out what they care about, like on the budget priority survey, and then bringing that to administrators to say, this is the majority opinion of Senate, and not just saying, well, this is what we think, or this is what some people think. We want to do a majority effort of the student body.
Thank you. Ms. Corrado, 1 minute.
I have to disagree with some of that. I think that if you have the relationships and the skills to sit in a meeting with administrators, you come to realize what works best for them and how they can best work with you. I also think that if the mechanisms were in place to communicate with students, such as the budget priority survey, which I think needs vast improvement. That is something that Zach and I are extremely passionate about. The budget priority survey process should be something that you put the questions on the survey and you answer those questions. It should not be made up by the student government and then presented to the student leadership, and then we can say the great things about printing to you and take credit for them. They should be the things that you vote on that survey, and that is a key way for us to be able to communicate with students on what's important to them and show that if we're representative of you, you can give us feedback and hold us accountable because we're going to present that.
Thank you. 40 seconds.
Sure, the budget priorities survey needs work, the budget priority survey process needs work, but we're not going to be able to fix it just by being the student government and doing the same things we've done. We have to fix that by talking to administrators who are going to give us the support we need. Those relationships aren't there right now, and they haven't been for several years. We need to work on making sure that we can talk to administrators, be straight and level with them, and make sure that they understand where we're coming from.
Thank you. Additional 40 seconds.
To touch on the other pieces of this question, I think two of the greatest challenges facing Northeastern right now is how quickly we've been expanding. I know since I've gotten here, it's expanded vastly, and sometimes I say to myself, I don't know if I would get in again if I applied right now. And I also think another thing that's a huge challenge to Northeastern students uniquely is the amount of students that are away from campus all the time, and that's a challenge to SGA too. And I think it's time that someone finally steps up and sees those challenges and comes up with solutions to them. Zach is away right now, and as involved and passionate as he is, it's difficult for even him to stay involved and keep up on those things. And having had the experience of him being away.
Thank you. Now the fun part. We open it up to questions from the audience.
So if anybody has a question from anywhere in here, if you just raise your hand, I can bring the microphone over to you. But please keep it appropriate.
Okay, I'm Matt, a business student, third year. And I know mostly at the first debate you guys said there's a lot of inefficiencies and a lot of insinuated personality conflicts in SGA.
And I was wondering, how do I know you guys aren't involved as part of the problem, and why should I vote for either of you?
Candidate Naragi, you have 1 minute.
It's honestly a very fair question. I think that the problems that have come from SGA are personal ones, and I'm very good at separating personal from professional. When it comes to being in an organization, you have to be able to work while you're there and have fun while you're not there. Northeastern is very much a work hard, play hard school, and I definitely embody that even in my work in SGA.
Candidate Corrado.
I think one important thing is that I was not on the e-board this year, so some of those personality differences I only know about because they've trickled down to affect the efficiency of the rest of the organization. I also think there are certain events that you could point to that may or may not have triggered those things. I don't know the details of them, but I think it's an important thing to keep in mind that if you want a student body president who's going to represent you, you have to think about what those representations are.
Candidate Naragi, 40 seconds for a rebuttal.
That's fair to say that you're not on cabinet, but however, there are relationships that are personal that aren't related to cabinet. You might be friends with people who are on cabinet and friends with people who have been dramatic, and that doesn't mean that you're removed from the situation. I'd argue that in order to be effective, you have to change the paradigm of what's going on in SGA.
Candidate Corrado.
I think an important change to make would be to see the people who are outside of the conference room on Wednesday nights during cabinet, who have worked within the organization and the other students and separated completely their SGA life from their personal life and not let those personality differences affect how effective they are throughout the year.
Also, in the meantime, if anybody wants to tweet a question to our Twitter at VoteNU2013, we will also be asking Twitter questions.
I'm Nina Stepnov. I am a business administration major and 2016 is my graduation year. So basically my question is, I know through IDEA and E-Club, I worked closely with both clubs, organizations, and we've had a lot of issues in terms of red tape, as we like to call it, huge issues, and they're almost near impossible to get around. For a club that's thriving on entrepreneurship and innovation, a school that's thriving on it and really just becoming as big as it is because of it, how do you guys plan on basically removing that red tape so that we can get more done and keep building the school up to what it should be? Thank you.
Candidate Corrado, you have 1 minute.
I think that's something that we've all experienced, and as in the relationships I have with administrators, it's taken years of cultivation, which I think can be an invaluable resource, but there are certain mechanisms that those are just illustrative of. You work on those certain things that are necessary, whether they're within SGA or how to work with administrators, that we can change the avenues you use to work with administrators so that they are the most symbiotic relationships that they can be, rather than students not knowing who or where to talk to them about. It should be the SGA's job that if we're not the ones talking to them for you, we're at least helping you if you need it.
Candidate Naragi.
Just like SGA has to interest students on initiatives that matter to them, we have to interest administrators with why they would want to fix these issues. Sometimes just because students want it isn't enough. We have to show them how it'll improve the rankings, for example, because there's a lot of emphasis on that, or how it will improve our relationships with other schools. On the other side of it, right now, it's probably easier for either Chris Wolfel or anyone on IDEA or E-Club to get a meeting with President Aoun because he interests President Aoun. SGA right now needs to make sure that we are interesting to the administrators so that way we can help to get things done.
Candidate Corrado, you have a 40-second rebuttal.
I think something else that is important to keep in mind that is easy to forget is that administrators, especially the ones that I've worked with, really do care about what the students are doing. They really do care about our ideas, and they're not looking to be the red tape. And it's important that we work out the best ways to work with them so that our ideas work with what they're able to do, because they're not looking to just be devil's advocate all the time, although it does feel like that sometimes. And I think developing those relationships and using those relationships as models can only be beneficial.
Candidate Naragi, 40-second rebuttal.
While it's true, it just goes back to what gets these administrators interested. What gets people who are on the board of trustees interested in what students have to say? I talked to Demore, who I had the opportunity to just speak with briefly. I said, why isn't there a student on the board of trustees yet when students wanted this to happen? He said, well, students are just one constituency of the university. We have alumni, faculty, staff, administrators, prospective students. Students play one part of a major role, and we have to make sure that that role is important to them.
My name is Gianna. I'm a sophomore and I'm a biology major. This question's for Nick, actually. I feel like Mary has given tangible evidence of things that we can see around campus that she has done and she has been a part of. What things have you personally been successful in your role as an EVP?
Sure. Thanks, Gianna. That's a good question. With the role of EVP, you have a very internal-facing position. You're working on chairing Senate every week, which just happens. You're working on project managing the e-board, which has definitely been difficult this year because it's new. Past EVP Pet worked a lot to make sure that that was happening in an effective way. I tried to change it, and it didn't work out, but we moved on from that. What I've done is identified the problems and worked on solutions that we're going to be able to enact in the future in a different capacity. I'd say that any EVP, whether it's me or somebody else, is going to have a similar experience in making the organization run well, and not so much of, hey, I was able to put something on campus directly for you.
Thank you, Candidate Naragi. Are there any other questions from the audience?
All right, I'm Matt Clamp. I'm a comp sci major, and I'm a second year here on campus. So I have a question for candidate Naragi. At Thursday's debate, you received the question, why didn't you bring any change to SGA this year as EVP? And said that there was too much contention between the e-board and the rest of SGA to get anything done. Since you don't get to appoint your own e-board, what is going to make next year different for you? What will change about it?
Also, another great question, and I don't know that the way that we elect our current cabinet is maybe the best way to do so, but in order to be effective going into next year with whoever is on next year's cabinet, I have to make sure to start early and make sure that we're working with each individual in a way that works for them, and make sure that these points of contention, these dramatic issues that have come up, stay out of Senate. I'm the kind of person who's not going to let, in a leadership role, not going to let things happen and just get away with them. And that's not the capacity that I've had this year as EVP. I haven't had the opportunity to say, Senator Joe, Senator Bob, you're causing a problem, let's work to fix this problem. I've been the chair of Senate, I have to be unbiased.
Are there any other questions from the audience? No question is a stupid question. Okay. Oh.
I'm Veronica. I am a marketing and MIS major, and I am graduating this May. It's scary. So you guys keep talking, both of you guys keep talking about, making SGA more known to the student body. I feel like you guys are both trying to promote that, but what are some exact initiatives or marketing initiatives you plan on doing next year? That was really the big question. So what are your initiatives? What do you guys plan on doing? And yeah, I really want to hear.
So I definitely think this year that communications has been something that was not as effective as it could have been. And as much as I don't think, I've always held the core belief that I don't think SGA necessarily has to be in your face if you don't need us or you don't want us to be. But we should be something that if something is wrong on campus, if there's something you'd like to see, like a bike maintenance stand, or more forks in the dining hall, or compostable containers at Kiko Kitchen, we should be the place that you know you can come to. And I think one thing that was not done as well as it could have been this year was communicating to the student body how to give us feedback. And I would say restructuring Senate, I don't believe in an entire overhaul of the Senate or of SGA at all. I don't believe in changing the elections process or how senatorship works. But I think there are things that definitely need to be improved, and I think the representation system is one of them, and that will be a way for students to know, no matter where they are, who they can talk to and about what.
Candidate Naragi.
I don't understand how you can say that we don't want to have a change in the way that Senate works or is communicating or is represented, but also want to say that the communications have changed. I'm going to go through these ideas quick so I can give you some tangible ones. Budget priorities happens once a year. Let's make it happen twice a year. Have a survey go out that's developed by the students so that students can give feedback directly and have thousands of students answer that survey. Provide senators that are now representing different constituencies with resources to reach out to their constituents. A template quick pitch, a template email, any way that they can talk to their constituents in an effective way that they might not know how to do when they get in Senate. Next off, town hall meetings I've mentioned a bunch. In order to make them effective, we have to have a script and we also have to have advertising for them and interesting facts and issues that will come up in those meetings. Additionally, we worked on a referenda to have monthly emails to the student body. Unfortunately, that referenda is not going to be on the ballot because it did not receive enough signatures. However, I think something along those lines would be great. And lastly, we need to focus on, I'll tell you in a bit.
40-second rebuttal from candidate Corrado.
I think that I don't believe that I want to keep the status quo. I think there are certain things about the status quo that are working. There are hardworking students in Senate who genuinely do want to work on projects that interest them and do the best they can for the students they represent. I think changing the representation system in the way that Zach and I have thought about it, because I've been both an academic senator and a special interest senator, and I see what works and doesn't work within both of those, is an important way for students to be, SGA to be everywhere without being in your face.
40-second rebuttal from candidate Naragi.
To go back to tangible ideas, I think my favorite and one of the most effective potential ideas for next year is to pick one initiative per month that the entire SGA will focus on. All of the senators will be prepped in advance and know that this is the initiative that we're talking about. The cabinet members will pick months in advance, and then the entire association will focus their efforts on communicating one thing for 1 month and make sure that's advertised to the student body.
Okay, we're going to take one more question from the audience if there are any out there, and then I'm going to give the mic back to Jason for some Twitter questions. So does anybody else have a question for the candidate or a candidate?
Hi, my name is Nicole Daly. I'm a Midler. So speaking of the budget priority survey, every year the budget priority survey gets an overwhelming amount of feedback about the amount of funding that goes towards the athletics department. And obviously as Huskies, we all want to support our teams, but were you aware that the athletics department was given additional funding to buy out additional home games this year? How do you feel about that, and do you think the students would be supportive of that use of their tuition dollars?
Candidate Naragi, you have 1 minute.
I think to look at the attendance at our home games, especially the home games that aren't hockey, kind of speaks to the student opinion on this question. We see a lot of students who aren't going to the games because they aren't interesting or their friends don't want to go. I think that's something we can definitely improve on. And I think that's something that would make a community stronger here at Northeastern. But I don't know if the administration should be spending money on things that students aren't necessarily using.
Candidate Corrado.
I agree. I don't think that the administration should have the bandwidth to make that kind of decision. And I think that the way SGA can influence that is the budget priorities process improvement. I think there are clubs out there like the Entrepreneurs Club that would love nothing more than all of the money that went to that athletics buyout. I think it's important for us to realize that the administration does sometimes have different priorities than we have. And if we're effective in being a representation and we have effective feedback mechanisms, that we can be that strong voice that is stronger than some of the administrative opinions.
40-second rebuttal, candidate Naragi.
If the administration doesn't have the bandwidth to make those decisions, then who does? I think that saying that there are different priorities for the administration and the students just further shows the disconnect that we have with our administrators. We need to make sure that when SGA is communicating feedback from the student body to the administrators, that it's actually their feedback, and that will align these priorities.
40 seconds, candidate Corrado.
As a very involved member of the SGA, I'd be curious to know from the leadership from the inside what happened in the budget priorities process this year. I don't think that it was proper representation of what the students wanted to see on it, and then therefore what they voted on, because we have situations like this. And I think that is something that if you're confused by it and you're not outraged by it now, that you should be.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move into the Twitter questions, and I'm going to turn this mic over to Jason.
First question from Twitter. The current SGA president got rid of the stipend for SGA. If elected next student body president, do you plan to re-request stipends? We'll start with candidate Corrado.
So stipends are not currently in the budget for us next year. I think that this has been a question that the Senate, for as long as I've been in it, has grappled with, and I think that it's important that I agree with other students that we do not do more work than the other student club presidents. The other organizations work just as hard as we do, and we don't deserve the funds that we all pay into as a stipend for ourselves. I think it could have been given, it was a very politicized topic this time last year, and it probably could have been given more thought throughout the year if we really felt we needed stipends, but I personally, as president, do not think that the e-board of our student group deserves any more compensation than the rest of it.
Thank you. Candidate Naragi, same question.
No. The SGA e-board does not need stipends. The SGA e-board needs a way to spend money that is going to do productive things for the students. So if I was talking about a marketing and outreach initiative, then we'll spend money on that, but let's spend it out of our cash account. And when we're talking about other issues, we're talking about SAF funded stipends that have been going back and forth. Student activity fee, that's what goes to all of the events that you see on campus that have the little thing in the advertisements that says sponsored by the student activity fee. We do not need to take money out of your events and put it into our pockets. Absolutely not.
Candidate Corrado, any rebuttal?
I also think that it's been recently changed within our governing documents that now no matter whether an e-board position takes a stipend or not, they are accountable to the rest of the student body by reporting on a monthly report. And I think that this stipend issue ties very well into that, because that was what was basing the decision this past year. If you were going to be accountable on the website with those documents, you needed to be taking a stipend, and that was the position of my opponent, and he therefore didn't believe he needed to be accountable in that way, and I'm really glad that it got changed this year, that whether stipends is an issue or not, you are accountable to the student body.
Additional 40 seconds.
Mary, I think you're straying away from the issue of stipends, which we absolutely do not need. Let me reiterate, no stipends. We've talked about this. We campaigned on it last year. We do not need stipends. The monthly report issue is separate, it's different, and it's not the only way that people are held accountable to the student body. And I don't think, like I said in the last debate, that any student has ever read monthly reports unless they've been directly engaged with SGA. No stipends.
Thank you. Next question. Describe the proudest accomplishment in SGA while working with administrators. Candidate Naragi, 1 minute.
That's a really tough question. I think there are a lot of things that SGA does on an overarching basis, and I think one of those things, I can't even say that. I think going back a couple of years, taking a look at the way that SGA worked with administrators to get things like virtual advising and the faculty textbook agreement done while I was sitting on the academic affairs committee are really tangible ideas but those aren't necessarily in play right now. And again, like I said, as EVP, I have an internal facing position. It's hard to say where we work with the administrators. We have a not so great relationship with administrators. We haven't seen a lot of the ideas that we've wanted pass referenda process that we said, okay, well, let's even out the marijuana and alcohol policy. Well, that can't pass because we won't let that happen. Let's try to decrease or lower tuition. Well, that can't happen. We need to be talking to these administrators in a constructive way.
Great, thank you. Candidate Corrado?
I have to completely disagree with my opponent here. I've worked over the past few years, like I've said several times in the debate, that I've worked on student services projects. I'm the chair of the Renewable Energy Initiative Board that funded, with your donations to the renewable energy fee, the bike maintenance stand. And I think that if you take the position that administrators are going to be hard to work with and they're not going to like our ideas, you're not looking at the things that we have done, including the bike maintenance stand, which was a process and it went relatively smoothly, more smoothly than some of those other referenda. But in sitting on the Student Services Committee and being the Assistant Vice President for Student Services, we've seen the referenda questions from last year, like the guest sign-in policy that's now in place where you can sign more than 3 people in during the week. And working on the technology that we see for a sign-in process. Those are things that have tangibly been done. And working with administrators, having the right relationships with administrators is a key part of that.
40 seconds.
Let me be clear. I've said that some administrators are hard to work with, but I didn't say that they weren't going to like our ideas. I said that we need to focus on communicating the ideas and sharing them and talking to them rather than telling them. We can't go to administrators and just complain. We can't bring all of our problems to administrators. We need to bring the solutions to our problems with administrators and again, tell them how they can help us.
40 seconds.
I think if you look at my track record during my time in the association, you can see that that's exactly what I have done. And you can't point to anything similar on my opponent's side.
Thank you. Final question from Twitter. Every year, SGA says that the relationship with students will improve. How will you make efforts to do that this year? Candidate Corrado, will start with you.
Like I said, I think that SGA being this entitled #1 club on campus, relaunching our communication so it is like completely out of control is not exactly what we're looking to do and not what the student body is looking to do. I don't think that that's true in any facet that you look at, whether it be the United States government or the student government. But I think it is important that if we have mechanisms in place for representation, for having face-to-face conversations, for keeping your representatives accountable, then that is how we improve the relationships among students. We remember that the student groups and the groups of students, like the students that wait online in Starbucks or that the lighting's really bad in Shulman when you're trying to do homework, know where they can go if they have a problem or an idea for a student group or they need student funding or anything else that the student government has the resources and the capacity to do.
Thank you. 1 minute for you.
I don't think anyone on campus is saying that SGA is the #1 group on campus, be it in importance or effectiveness. I think it's important to consider that we really need to represent these students, but it's a tangible plan on making sure that we're attacking on all different facets to be the student government. Think about what student government means. It means being there for the students that aren't able to come into the Senate meetings and aren't able to be there and talk to administrators and act on their behalf to make sure they have the best experience at Northeastern possible.
40 seconds.
I think over the past 3 years, I've held very similar beliefs, and you can point specifically to the things I've worked on as a student that I really do believe my relationship with administrators and the work ethic and the thought process that goes into me being your representative is something that a lot of people on campus could relate to. And I wish over the next week I could speak to every student on campus so that we could have a conversation in that way. But that is something that we need as a student body. We're not the #1 group, and that is definitely not what I meant, but being the student group that students know of, no matter what they need, bad or good, is the most important thing to make this election relevant to everyone sitting here and everyone across campus and on Co-op in Maine.
Time. Thank you. 40 seconds.
You know why we can't talk to every student organization? Because most student organizations don't want us to talk to them. They feel like we're wasting their time. We need to change that. We need to make sure that every student organization can feel like we can support them in whatever way possible. I hope you learned a little bit about what we do, and I hope that you'll be able to talk to us in a way that we're able to help you out. Like I said, my name is Nick Naragi. I'm running for student body president. I'm running with Maya Kihata, who's running for executive vice president. We have the experience, the solutions, the ideas, the relationships, and the leadership in order to effectively represent you, be it in meetings with administrators, in meetings with student groups, and all around campus. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you, Jason, for helping us out here. And I hope you all have a great night. Thank you.
Candidate Corrado, 1 minute.
Like I've tried to reiterate throughout this entire debate, is that I really believe that the student body position and any leadership position within SGA should be something that we feel represents each of us. And in campaigning for nearly a week now, Zach and I have tried to paint a picture of a student that is somehow relatable to you. And I think that's not a facade in any way. I really think Zach and I are passionate about SGA because we are just like every other student on campus who's passionate about other things. We need to start moving towards more tangible solutions and stop casting abstract visions. It's time to move forward so that we have the foresight to not only understand the situation we're in now, but where we'd like to see the student government go. And I believe that Zach and I, in repairing and improving the association from the inside out, can make the most change. Because if we're not representative of you, if we're not communicating with you and having face-to-face feedback and holding ourselves accountable, most importantly, then we're missing opportunities to serve. And Zach and I believe we've missed enough opportunities.
On behalf of SGA and all the administrators who don't like red tape, such as myself, I'd really like to thank all of you for being here tonight and also for asking me to moderate. It was a great time, much appreciated. Thank you both and good luck to you.
Hi, I would just like to also thank Jason for coming to moderate. Voting will open this Thursday on March 28th. You can vote for either Nick or Mary on your MyNU portal or by going to www.northeastern.edu/SGA vote. So hopefully you cast a vote, and thank you for coming.